Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Folks, we live under tyranny. There's no way around it. You can argue and argue that, well, it's not quite there yet. Maybe this is tyranny light. Maybe we're heading that direction. But I mean, it's still a democracy, right? We still live under a republic. No, we don't. You can see how much you love all of that and love the Constitution and everything. And at this point, it doesn't matter because we no longer live under that system. In the middle of the night, while the whole country was asleep, it all got taken from us. Not by a war, not by an act of Congress or a ruling from the Supreme Court, but simply because people were asleep and allowed the government to grow to the size that it is now a tyrannical government. And that's exactly what we have. We have a dictator living in the White House. Maybe he's not the one in charge. I mean, it is getting hard to believe that the fumbling grandpa is actually capable of really leading anything. I'm sure Obama or someone else or a group of people are actually running the show. But that doesn't matter. We live under a dictatorship, and this is tyranny, folks. It's tyranny when there is a document that holds the government accountable and restrains their scope and their power that is no longer acknowledged, that is no longer being used, and that it no longer has the authority, that said document, the Constitution, to actually control and restrain said government. That's where we're at today. And folks, another thing has recently happened, and it's one of those lines in the sand. It's one of those lines that when it's crossed, it should be one of those things that cause Americans to rise up. Just like when we saw a few years ago where they were arresting people and pastors for going to church, simply going to church in this country. People were being handcuffed. People were being fined. They all this kind of stuff just because they were going to church. When that happened, there should have been a massive outcry. It should have been taken care of by the people, but it wasn't. And here once again, we're at a crossroads where things are happening. The news media is silent. The vast majority of Americans don't even know what's going on. And the ones that do, even if they don't like it, they do nothing about it. Folks, they're coming after your guns. I mean, it's simply put, plain, all that kind of stuff. And that was certainly one of the main reasons why we once before fought a revolution against the British government. Biden administration's alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives, the ATF, has issued a new ruling. Yes, a ruling. It's not a law. According to our Constitution, the only things that can become law is if Congress votes on it, passes it, and the president signs off on it. And the only other types of rules that are lawful are when the Supreme Court makes a ruling on something. And that's really always just in what the government can and can't do. It's mostly just an interpretation of the law and what the government can and can't do. And nowhere in the Constitution or any kind of government documents does it say that departments like the ATF or the FBI or the FDA or the USDA or the EPA or any of those agencies have any authority whatsoever to create laws or even rules, but yet they do it all the time. Sometimes they are challenged in courts and sometimes the people win. But even if they do win, there is a mountain of damage that is done to individual lives and to the sanctity of a free people in between the times of the ruling passed and the court decision. And this one probably will go to court, and it's very possible that the Supreme Court will rule against it. But nonetheless, it's still happening. The ATF has announced a new rule that will enact universal background checks. So to give you a little backstory on this, the United States has completely and repeatedly, the Congress has repeatedly disapproved of universal background checks. For over 20 years now, they have been trying to push through legislation for universal background checks through Congress, and for 20 years it's been shot down. Since the founding of this nation, it has always been part of our freedoms as individuals to be able to sell and transfer a firearm to another person without going through the government. There are some state laws that trample on that right, But according to the federal government, they have never done so until now. You're going to become a criminal, potentially, if you sell Grandpa's shotgun to your neighbor. So what they are doing here is that they are, according to Attorney General, I've printed off the article, and it has some actual, I'll show you, this is some of the actual government documents. I've got it highlighted there. Let's see, where's the other one at? Right here. Has all the codes and stuff like that. Basically, according to the Attorney General, a Bipartisan Safer Communities Act was passed by Congress to reduce gun violence, including the implementation of Congress's mandate to expand the definition of who must obtain licenses and conduct background checks before selling firearms. But it does not create a law that requires background checks. The director of the ATF has said that this new law would clarify the circumstances in which a person is engaged in business dealing with firearms, and thus required to obtain a license and follow laws of Congress has established for firearms dealers. But they have not established this one. Basically what they're saying, in the past, according to the laws, the actual laws, there was a clear definition between a firearms dealer and an individual transferring sales of a weapon. Now those lines have greatly blurred. Basically, you have to prove now, if you sell a firearm, you have to prove that you're only selling this firearm because you're a collector and you have a hobby of firearms, and that you're not making any increased profit. Because if they prove or they believe that you are making money off of that sale of a firearm, then you must have an FFL, and you must ensure that the person you're selling it to gets a background check. What that means is that, well, they're stomping all over your rights. And I know that some of you are saying, yeah, but there are a lot of guys out there that's just buying and selling all the time. So what? So what? Who cares? I certainly don't. What this does is it takes the ability for us to arm ourselves and takes it out of our hands and puts it into the control of the federal government. According to this, and let me find it here, that the terms personal collection, the proposed rule also defines the term personal collection to clarify when persons are not engaged in business because they only make occasional sales to enhance their personal collection for a hobby. So if you cannot prove that your sale of a firearm is not to enhance your personal collection for your hobby of collecting guns, then you are considered by this new rule a federal firearms dealer. Let's see. Going over here, if the firearms that you are selling are within 30 days of originally purchasing, if they are like new condition, meaning if you keep them clean and you take care of your firearms and you sell them to someone, then that's an indicator that you are actually a dealer and not just some person selling to enhance your personal collection. Or if it's proven that you've made some kind of profit, meaning you bought a firearm a few years ago or even a couple of months ago, and you paid $400 for it, and Joe over here says he's willing to give you $600 for it, well, you just made a profit. And now you have to have a license, and you have to do a background check on that person, and if you don't, you could be fined or imprisoned. This completely changes a lot of stuff, and it gives so much more power to the ATF for them to come in and to actually come into your property, because for the most part, unless you're doing some kind of overt criminal activity, the ATF, as much as I hate them, and I mean passionately, they only really are supposed to be dealing a lot with businesses, with federal firearms licensed holders. But this changes that. This gives them some authority to come to your home and to question and make you prove that, because it's this assumption of guilt and you have to prove your innocence instead of the other way around. Here's basically the only way that you can avoid this. If you occasionally sell a firearm, this is actually from the official ATF ruling. If you occasionally sell a firearm only to obtain a more valuable or desirable or useful firearm in their personal collection or hobby, unless their conduct demonstrates as a predominant unless their conduct also demonstrates a predominant intent to earn profit. So according to this, if you earn any kind of profit, and I know you can say, well, I'll just say that I'm just buying another one or stuff. Do you realize that these people have tentacles that reach far and wide? They can basically see everything you've ever done online. They can see your bank records. They can see all kinds of stuff. They listen to you on your phone. They know they can trace your movements. Look at what they did with the January 6th people. That's how they found out where they were at. They were pulling up their phone records and finding their GPS points of where they were at. They can do that to any one of you folks. And so the bottom line here is this rule creates a paradigm in which gun owners will have to prove that they are not a dealer before they can sell a gun without a background check. This is one of the most fundamental rights that as Americans we have held since our inception. And the Biden administration, once again, and the far left and these globalists and these demonic people, these ones that think they're so elite and that they are designed and designated to rule over us. They don't care about your personal rights, and they certainly hate that you own guns. And that's why every chance he gets, the Biden and all of his administration is constantly talking about how they have to take your personal property away from you. Your personal property. Can you imagine what our founding fathers would have thought about that? Can you imagine what generations past would have thought that the government says that they're bragging about, they're openly bragging about their will and their desire to take your personal property from you, to take your ability to defend yourself, to take your ability to keep this government in check. That's what they say every day. They say you don't need them, they say you have no right to them, and they say they want them, and they're doing everything they can to take them. And at some point, we're going to start seeing this happen more and more, where they're coming after you. They're devising everything they can, every plan that they can come up with to take away your right to defend and your right to hold true to your own personal freedoms. And what are you doing about it? Are you preparing for that? Are you banding together with others in preparations of that day? Do you have a plan? I mean, it's a tough one. You know, they come to your door, they want to drag you off, some kind of Ruby Ridge thing happens. Not a good scenario. But what we can do, at least between now and then, is to stand our ground and to disconnect from this and to show them that they no longer have the authority over us. Now, of course, you can say, that's ridiculous. They're still going to take it. Well, they might, yes. But we have to do everything we can to make sure that we are no longer dependent upon them, that we are no longer tethered, that we're no longer suckling on the teat of the government, because that's what we've been doing for the last 40 or 50 years. All of us, every single one of us, are in some way dependent on this system. Yeah, some people may think that we can vote this out of office, but honestly, unless the whole system is collapsed to the ground and demolished, I don't think that electing someone is really going to change anything. This deep state, it has tentacles that most of us cannot even imagine. And they're going to do everything they can to take every right from you and to make you slaves to their system, slaves to their globalist ideas, and slaves to their beast system. Because in the end, that's the goal, is to completely capture you, mind, body, and soul. Don't let it happen. And I would also advise you to start stocking up, because as these rulings start rolling out, even if later on they're shot down by the Supreme Court, I assure you they're going to do as much damage as possible between now and then. And there's no guarantee that they will be shot down. At some point, they're gonna flood the court with new justices. You and I know that. You know that they've talked about it. You know they want to do it. At some point, they're going to. I would say probably after the next election. Once they feel that they have solidified their grasp on us, we'll probably see an expansion of the court, and everything that we've ever held true is going to be pushed through, and it's going to be challenged and overturned. And once that's done, the very last few fragments of the Constitution will be destroyed, and we will be in overt, open, complete control tyranny. You need to be getting your houses in order. You need to be stocking up on food, stocking up on the boomsticks and the freedom seeds, and figuring out how to disconnect as much as possible, form groups and tribes with other people of like minds, and come up with a plan to get out of Babylon and get out of these cities of wickedness and get away from as much of this wickedness as possible and live a life as much as you can self-sufficient. Because while it's not 100% foolproof plan, it's certainly better than being stuck in these cities of ill repute. Folks, get your houses in order and prepare yourselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.